In this lecture, we're going to be looking at exponential regression. So the type of problems you'll see on the final exam will give you a table, either horizontally or vertically. This one is a horizontal table. And what we have to know about these tables is that your first row, if your tables are in rows, are going to be your x values, and your second row are going to be your y values. Now remember, y is the same thing as f of x. So when it comes to writing the equation for our regression equation, we're going to use f of x. So what we're going to do with our calculator is we're going to put the first row into list 1, and we're going to put the second row into list 2. Okay, so let's get our calculator up on the screen here. Now the first thing you'll need to do is to clear out your lists. So press Stat, because you cannot write over old lists. Enter, and then tell it to clear out list 1, second 1, comma, which is above the 7, and second 2. Then enter, and then it'll tell you that it's done. Then click Stat and enter. And I'm going to scroll over to list 1, and you're told to use your graphing calculator to fit an exponential model. So it will be told in the problem that you have to use exponential regression. So my list 1 is going to be 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And then I'm going to scroll over to my list 2, and that's going to be 125, 160, 210, 275, 355, and 460. Then I'm just going to scroll back up and double check that I entered everything correctly. You make a mistake here and everything is wrong afterwards. Oh, and I did make a mistake. I didn't put the 10, did I, in list 1? So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and then here we want 10. So it's so important to double check. Okay. Now that I've done all of that, I'm going to get my calculator to use exponential regression to give me an exponential model. So I'm going to scroll over to Calc, and I'm going to keep scrolling down until I find exponential regression. There it is. And I'm going to tell it, I used list 1 for the x values, the second 1, comma, and I used list 2 for the y values, second 2. Okay, so now we have the regression equation. And so this regression equation is y equals a times b to the x, and then it tells you where a is equal to that, and b is equal to that. Now this is not the answer. Like if you were going to write down the regression equation, I'd have students that write that as their answer. They're just copying what they see in their graphing calculator. And so we need the actual equation. So now y is the same thing as f of x, and we need to write these as f of x. So f of x equals, and then you want to take these to 4 decimal places. So if I take this to 4 decimal places, that's going to give me 124.3488. That's my a. Then times b, and I'm going to take that to 4 places, and that 5 is going to boot that up to a 1 when I round it. b to the x. This is my regression equation. So it's a function of x. So that would be the answer to number 1 on this worksheet. So for number 2, I'm going to have to use the regression equation. How many fruit flies will be present in 20 days? So how many flies in 20 days? Well, if we look at our data set, the flies are our y values, which is the same thing as f of x, and the days are our x values. So I've been given x. So we want to find f of x, find the number of flies, when x is equal to 20. And so we use our formula. I'm going to find f evaluated at 20. And so I'm going to do that here. It's going to be 124.3488 times 1.1401 to the 20th power. And that's what I'm going to do here. 124.3488 times 1.1401 to the 20th power. Okay, so approximately, if I take it to the nearest number of flies, 1712. Okay. So you notice I did it there with the multiplication symbol. It might be better if you do it with parentheses, just to remind yourself that if I have something like that, it's easier to see that 2 is taken to the x first. You do not multiply 5 times 2, so this is not equal to, and some students will do this, they'll multiply the 5 and the 2. It's not equal to that, because order of operations says this 5 can't be multiplied by the 2 first. The precedence, the order that it happens in, is you've got to do that first. So if I have, that's my f of x, and I have f of 3, it's going to be 5 times 2 cubed, which is 5 times 8, which is 40. Okay. Sometimes when students write this without parentheses and they just write it like that, they wrongly do the 5 times 2, so that's not equal to that, because you have to do order of operations. That has to be done first, and it only applies to the 2. Okay, so sometimes instead of using the multiplication symbol, you should just use the parentheses, so you're not tempted to make that kind of mistake. So 3, 4, 8, 8, and then parentheses. Close parentheses. Oh, what did I do there? Oh, okay. I didn't, I'm having to do this with the mouse, and it needed to be 1.1401. I left out the 1 there. Now, see how something that small of a mistake radically changes the answer. So let's try this again. And like I said, I'm doing this with a mouse, not my fingers, so it's not, I think I clicked the 1, but it didn't click enough. So 1712. All right. Now the next problem I want to look at, here our data is in a vertical table, and oftentimes if the vertical table is really long, it will be split up like in the WebWorks, and so they'll put half of it there and then the other half next to it, and it looks like you have 4 columns, but you don't. It's just they didn't put it in one long table, and it can be confusing to some students. Okay, now this says, all right, the profits from ABC Corporation for the years 1998 to 2008 are given below, and the data was all collected at the same time of the year, at the end of the year. This says to find an exponential regression equation that models this information with respect to t, where your time begins, t equals 0, corresponds to the year 1998. Now notice that this gave you the instructions to do that, but whenever you have a column or a row that lists years, you need to do this every time, even if the instructions are not there. Because if you do this by the literal year, your equation is going to be horrible, horrible. So, if I ignore the instructions, which a lot of students do, and then they don't get the regression equation that WebWorks has specifically asked for. Now, when we have it like this, those are your x values. So, if I was going to put it in a list like this, this would be my list 1, and these are my y values. Now, let's see what happens if I take these x values as they are and I don't change them into t values as instructed. But, as I said, whenever you see something like this where you have years, literal years, you need to go ahead and change it into t, even if the instructions don't say anything. So let me clear out list 1 and 2. Okay, let me focus. All right, that's better. Okay, so 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003. And then I'm going to go double check. You make a mistake here, it's all wrong. Okay, in 1998. Okay. Press Stat, go to Calc, scroll all the way down till we get to Exponential Regression with List 1 and List 2. Okay, look at that. Do you know what that number is? Well, that number, e to the minus 23, means that you have to write down 23 zeros. Where's my... There's 23 zeros, okay? That's where your decimal place goes, and then these numbers without the decimal place follow. Okay, so that's your A in your equation. F of x equals A times b to the x. That's your A. How do you fancy doing calculations with that? Okay, it's undoable. Can't do it. So, how do you fix it? And as I said, sometimes it gives you the instruction to change it to t. Other times it doesn't. It'll just give you this list and what were the profits in 2006. So, as a default, as a rule, whenever you see literal years given like this, you need to change it into t. So where t equals 0 corresponds to 1998. So I'm going to have a list, and instead of my x values, I'm going to have my t values. So my time begins in the year 1998. The year 1999 is 1 year after my time begins. So I'm not going to use this x list. My list 1 is going to be my t values, and my list 2 will be my y values. And I will get a function with respect to t, not to x. Now your calculator always shows your exponential regression equation written with an x and a y, but we are understanding here that I'm going to have my function with respect to t. So I have to press stat, I have to go back, and I have to clear out this old list 1. I'm keeping the list 2. That's not going to change. So second 1. And now press stat, enter, and I'm going to put in my t values. Okay, now press stat, go to calc, and do exponential regression. And tell it list 1, which is now your t values, and list 2. And then enter. And now see how much better that is. So if you use the literal value, you get that, those years, that's your A. And that's just undoable. So my function, my regression equation, is with respect to t. So my calculator gives me this. And I just need the A and the B. These R's don't matter for this video. Okay. Now I'm going to write my regression equation with respect to t. So it's going to be f of t equals a times b to the power of t. And I'm going to take these to 4 places. So I'll have 51.8428 times b, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that 3 doesn't change anything, so I don't have to write that 0. That is my regression equation. Okay. Now, what were the profits in 2006? What we don't do is do that, because 2006 was an x value. And we have to convert 2006 to a t value. Now my time began in 1998. So for 2006, t is going to be the years after 1998. So 2006 minus 1998, which is going to give me 8. So the profits in 2006, well, we have to change that to a t value, and so t is equal to 8, and now I can plug 8 into my equation. And so that's what I'm going to put in there. So, parentheses 51.8428, close parentheses, 1.028 to the power of 8, close parentheses. And so there's a couple of ways we can do this. Sometimes WebWorks will give you a box and then put million, okay, because we were told that these profits were in millions. So when WebWorks prompts you like that, you take it to the nearest whole number. So about 65 million. Now, if WebWorks does not provide this word million, they want the literal answer. And the literal answer is going to be this number times a million, because, you know, it says profits in millions. And so we understand that 51.4 million were the profits in 1998. So they want the number, and you have to put in the millions. So what you have to do is take this number and multiply it by a million. Okay, and take it to the nearest million. Okay, so that will be a 3. So the literal answer is okay, so, and you do not have to put the commas in. I put the commas in to say the literal answer is 64,659,653. Okay. So there's 2 ways WebWorks will ask you. If it provides the word million and you just have to fill in that box, then you round this to the nearest whole number. If it doesn't provide the word million, you have to give the actual answer, which is that. Okay, so that ends this video.